G'day, it's Rusty and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be trying something I've never done before, and I'm going to cut a file that is bigger than my table. I know that sounds a bit crazy. We're going to use a process called indexing or file indexing, and I'm using the MyPlasm software, and what I've needed to do is I've needed to turn a few things off on my table. We've got a file that we're going to cut. It's an Anzac soldier standing on reverse arms. It's 15 millimeters high. Now my cut area on the table front to back is 1320. So this is 1500. We're going to cut this in one piece, and there's a few things we need to do, and I've sort of got it all set up already, but I'll explain to you what I've done, and then I'll take you on the computer and I'll show you in the cutting software what we've had to do. So basically what we do is we need a reference point. So on the side of the table here I've clamped a piece of 75 by 5 flat bar, and that needs to be parallel to the table. So the best way I could think of to get it parallel was to measure from the outside of this linear rail to the outside of the flat bar. And we measured that all the way down, and we've clamped the flat bar front and back. The reason I need to do that is I need to then put the sheet of steel on and butt it up against this edge. So this is 5mm flat bar, I'm cutting a piece of 3mm steel, so I can butt it up against it. I've moved it across, and then there's a few little things you've got to do with the setup. So what I've done is I've taken the file at 1500 high and I've cut it into two pieces. Now logically for me I put a line through at 1200, so the top file is 1200 high, the bottom file is 300 high. So when you stick them together you can align them, and I've left a very small gap. So what I need to do then is set the cut sequence so it cuts the inner bit first of the top part of the file, then it goes around and cuts the outside of the upper piece, and where it stops you then have to set the start of the lower piece as the next cut, and it's basically in line with it. So then you wait for the torch to finish the cut, come up, move a couple of mil, and then as it goes to align itself on that, you stop it. Then what we do is, because we've marked a reference point on the sheet and on the flat bar, we then move the steel 300mm down the table. The 300 for me is the height of the second half of the file. So if we move the sheet down 300 against this reference point, then we need to move the torch back 300 as well. So effectively it's starting in a new spot, 300mm further back from where it finished. But we have to trick because the software doesn't know that I can move the torch back. It thinks it's now back up here. So we have to do a little bit of trickery, and that just means we just have to manipulate which file we tell it to cut next. So then what it will do is, when we hit the start button, it'll then cut the bottom piece of the file, and I'm hoping that I'm going to end up with either no gap between the upper and the lower halves of the cut file, or a very, very small bridge. And that's okay, I can get that with a grinder. So then we'll end up with one piece 1500 high on a table that only has a cut length of 1300, if that makes sense. So I'm a bit nervous and I'm excited at the same time to do it, because what it means is I can then make bigger pieces. I've had a couple of requests in the past for 1500mm signs, and I've not been able to do it. I've been able to do it at 13. So this actually sort of helps me without having a bigger table. I know it's a bit of mucking around, but I mean, I don't get these requests all the time. So this is going to be a trial, and it's actually a piece for a client. So I'm pretty confident I got it right. But let me just take you over and I'll show you how we've set this file up, and yeah, fingers crossed we'll actually run this and we'll cut it out and we'll see we get the desired result that I'm sure we're going to get. Now with this piece of 75 by 5 flat bar clamped to the table, and I've measured from the rail outside of the linear rail to the edge and got it square, what I've done now is I've homed the torch. The torch is now in this position in the front left corner of the table. What I need to do is two things. I move the torch back 50mm just to give me some room on the table, And also I've got to move the torch 15 mil to clear that edge, plus another 15 just to give me some room. Now, the cut I'm doing allows me that tolerance, so I'm not going to be wasting too much metal, and I'm not going to have the torch anywhere near this edge. So let me do that, and then we can show you how this reference point is set up on this flat bar. So now I've moved the torch 30 mil over to the right from its homing point, which gives me clearance off this edge and also a little bit of clearance on the metal. And 50 mil back, I've marked this reference mark. So the two outer marks are actually the outside size of the nozzle to find me the center. So that's my center mark, that's my reference mark on this plate that does not move. So what I need to do now is move the torch down by the size of the cut file. That's the 1200 for the top half of the soldier. So then I will have to move the sheet so the torch is just inside the top edge of the sheet, and I'll do that now. So I've moved the torch back the required amount, and as you can see, it's just shy of the edge. And now what I've done is, now the sheet is in the correct position relative to the torch. Now I can come back to this reference mark and transcribe the mark from the flat bar onto the sheet, because I need to know that when we do the second half of the file, because we need to move the sheet back and transcribe a new mark down the sheet by the height of the second cut path of the file. So we'll start this first. The torch is now in this corner. That's where it needs to be. So now we'll get on and set the sequence cut, and then we can cut the top half. All right, so this is the file. As you can see here, it's 1500 high, 440 mil wide. We've got two pieces to this file, and there's this is the bottom piece, which is in here, and this is the top piece. And as you can see, this dotted line is actually what I've told the table it is in terms of width and height, and we've gone higher. So I've changed the sequence, and what I mean by that is we're going to go and cut all these inner letters first, and then this cut number 16, this is the important one to start. This is the one that goes up around the outside of the file. And if I can just, hang on, just let me. So that cut 16 goes all the way up around the top, and it comes around here. So it finishes, I can show you, it finishes this point right here. And then the next cut, which is cut 17, this is the point at which I have to stop the cutting, move the sheet down the table by 300, which is the height of this second cut. So then it can go around and cut the bottom piece. I hope I've explained it well enough. I'll show you as we go that we're going to move the sheet and the sequence we're going to use. So, all right, I've ticked the box. I've told the torch it's up here. The torch is up in the top left corner, and we've used a reference point from further down the table. So now it's just a case of I've just got to set the zero height on the torch so that it knows where the metal is, and then we can start and cut this. So in terms of setting my reference point, what I did was, because the top half of this file is 1200 high, after I homed the table where the torch is right in the front corner, I moved back 50 millimeters to give me some clearance. Then I moved the torch down 1200 mil. So what I mean by that is, if you look over here, these are the X and Y and Z coordinates from the home point. So I've had to move the X-axis in 15 mil to clear the flat bar and to the edge, and then another 15 mil to give me some clearance. And then I've taken the torch at this Y point, which was the front left corner. I've gone back 1200, plus I've gone back another 50, because I don't want the torch ending right at the front of the table, because it actually will impact the front of the water table. So it just gives me a little bit of clearance. And this just happens to be, the 33 happens to be where the torch is now, because I've just moved it up. All right, so we are ready. We are set with the torch is in a position to go. The compressor is on. The plasma cutter is on. We're running. These are my cut settings. Down here, 3 millimeter, we're using fine cut consumables, 45 amps, 1.3 millimeter kerf, which is the thickness of the plasma beam. And I'm cutting it at 2750 millimeters a minute. My second cut speed is 1650. We've got a cut height of 1.5 mil, 0 volts on the torch height controller, which means the software is doing the work for me. We have a PS height of 2.25 millimeters, a PS delay of 500 milliseconds or half a second, and our floating height, which is the height the torch travels to between one cut and the next, is set to 25. So, moment of truth, I remember I said we've got to wait till it does this last cut down here. When it gets there, I've got to stop everything. So, all right, we've told it it's there. Let's hit the start button. So this is the point that the torch has just finished cutting, which is the outside of the top part of the file. And as I showed you earlier, this is the reference point on the sheet and the reference point on the flat bar. What we need to do now is move this sheet 300 mil down the table. So I'll measure from this point forward 300, mark it on the table, slide the sheet back and position that mark against this reference point. Then we need to move the torch back 300 because it can't be coming forward, it'll run off the table. So we move the torch back 300. Then we have to trick the software into telling it the torch has actually moved back 300, because at the moment it thinks it's going to cut from here and come down the table. All right, so let me move the sheet and I'll show you what I've done when we get there. So this is my new mark, 300 mil down from this one in here, which was the end of the previous cut. So now we need to move the torch back 300. All right, what I've done now is I've moved the sheet back 300 mil. We now need to take a look at this y-axis value of 48.52 and move the torch back exactly 300. So we need to take that number, 48.52, 48.52 plus 300 is 348.52. So let me move that torch back now, and you'll see that this number here. So I'm just going to slow this down. So 348.59, pretty close to 52. So now what you can see now is the torch is actually here. But because we've moved the sheet down, what I have to do now is I have to go back into the cutting software. I have to then call up this bottom piece and insert that cut. Now, it still knows where the cut sequence is. The cut sequence is going to start from the outside piece, come around, and then go over and cut the inner piece. So nothing has changed except the torch position is now, if I use this position, the torch is in that spot, which is exactly where it was before, but I can't manually in the software move the torch back. So now when we hit the start button, what should happen now is it'll actually start from that edge of that previous cut, but everything's gone in 300. I hope that makes sense, because that's what we're going to do just now. All right, so we're set, ready to go, and I will hit the start button and it should start from this point. Fingers crossed. Okay, so this was the original mark. Down here was the 300mm extra. So when the cut stopped there, it started again. Let me just get it. It started again right there. So over the top, went down around the outside to here, came back over, picked up this point here, and then cut this last little piece out, and it's finished over the top of the previous one. So if I can just pan back a bit, you can see you've now got a file cut that's 1500 long, and my table only cuts 1300. So I'm really pleased with the way that's cut on the table, and I'm pleased with the time I spent just to get that right, so I knew that when I moved everything it would have a continuous cut. Well, this is the finished product. As you can see, it's 1500 high. I'm really pleased the way this turned out. You know, a little bit of uncertainty about how to actually do it. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos, but they don't actually show you the cutting. They sort of show you the drawing and that, but I never actually sort of got to see what I was doing. But yeah, I'm, as I said, really happy with the way it turned out. What it does is, as I said before, it opens up the ability for me to make bigger signs. I know I have to move the sheet around, but you know, I could have made this in two pieces and welded it, but as it's going to be freestanding in someone's garden, I think it's probably better as one piece. So if you like the video, a thumbs up would be appreciated. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, the subscribe button is down here. If you have any questions about what I did, and especially if you're running the MyPlasm software as well and you're not sure what I did and you want to get in touch, by all means please do so. I'm happy to share what I've been doing here. If you don't like the video and you give it a thumbs down, I'd appreciate you putting in the comments what it is you don't like, because I'm always trying to make better content. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a link in the description below to buy me a coffee. I certainly appreciate all the support I've been getting, and it really helps the channel. And just a quick shout out to my friend Daniel from Mark's Automation and Design. He and I had a chat the other day about this very topic, about how to index, and he gave me a few pointers. So thanks, Daniel. Your ideas worked along with what I had, so I greatly appreciate your support too. If you haven't seen an earlier video I did where I showed how I load the steel onto my table, it's the manual process I go through, I'll put a link to that video up here. And yeah, I hope you get something out of that, and you might have some ideas too about how I can better load steel onto my table. So that's it for this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.